All right, let's dive into one of the most famous love stories out there.
Romeo and Juliet.
You got it. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. We'll be looking at a Project Gutenberg ebook, the one updated this past June.
Ah, classic.
Right. But we're not just going to skim the surface. Everyone knows the basics. Forbidden love, tragedy, all that. We're going deeper.
I like it. Digging into what makes this play so powerful, even after centuries.
Exactly. So how about that prologue, huh?
Oh man, the chorus just sets the scene perfectly right off the bat.
Fair Verona. Two houses, both alike in dignity.
Classic lines.
But then, boom, he tells us right away, these lovers star-crossed, their fate sealed. Take their life, he says. No beating around the bushes there.
Not at all. Shakespeare wants us to know right from the start, this isn't ending happily ever after. It's like a warning almost.
Totally. Keeps you on the edge of your seat, even though you kind of know what's coming.
It's that tension. He's a master of it.
And he throws in the big themes, too, right there in the prologue.
Oh yeah, hate tearing things apart, but
Hmm?
love, even beauty.
Big questions. So let's jump in. Act 1, Scene 1. All that ancient grudge explodes.
Montagues versus Capulets, even the servants are brawling in the streets.
Like, haven't we all seen that? Some small thing escalates.
Get way out of hand.
Exactly. And that's where we meet the prince, Aeschylus.
Stepping in to try and restore order.
Right. He lays down the law, condemns both families. 3 civil brawls, he says. Imagine living in Verona back then.
Constantly on edge, worried about these families going at it.
It's not just their problem, it affects everyone.
Totally. Toxic environment.
And then the prince just drops the hammer.
Fight again, he says, and it's your life.
Stakes are high now, but then in the middle of all this chaos, we meet Romeo.
Pining for Rosalind. That first love kind of thing.
Right, all dramatic. Brawling love, loving hate, he says.
Oh, those intense emotions. It really establishes his character right away.
Totally. Passionate, impulsive, a little over the top maybe.
Which is going to get interesting when he meets Juliet.
Oh, speaking of, let's bring her in. At the Capulet house. Not even 14 yet.
And we get that great scene with the nurse.
Oh, she's hilarious. But also gives us a glimpse into Juliet's world. Then Lady Capulet arrives, and boom, she wants Juliet to marry Paris.
Can you imagine? Barely a teenager, and your mom's pushing marriage.
Talk about pressure. A recipe for rebellion.
For sure, and it sets the stage for what's to come. Because where do Romeo and Juliet meet for the first time?
The Capulet feast. Romeo and his friends decide to crash it.
Oh, they're asking for trouble.
Right. Romeo even has a bad feeling about it, but...
Curiosity and all that. Plus, when he sees Juliet.
Forget Rosalind, it's like the world stops. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night, he says, as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear.
Talk about smitten. Love at first sight. But there's danger lurking.
Oh, yeah. Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, recognizes Romeo and wants to fight.
Tensions are high.
Capulet manages to keep the peace, but it's a close call.
And then Romeo and Juliet, in the middle of all that, they share a sonnet.
Pilgrim, shrine, all this religious imagery.
It's intense.
And of course, then we get the balcony scene.
Moonlight romance.
And Juliet asking the big question. Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Why fall for the one person you absolutely shouldn't?
A question for the ages.
Yeah.
But their love, it just grows stronger. Despite the feud, they vow to be together.
And a bold declaration. But they're going to need some help to pull this off.
That's where Friar Lawrence enters the picture.
Franciscan friar. He's got knowledge of herbs, healing, and poison.
That'll come back later, for sure.
Romeo begs him, marry us today. He thinks their marriage will end the feud.
It's a lot to ask. But the friar, he agrees.
He does. But not without a warning. These violent delights, he says, have violent ends. Ominous, right?
A shadow hanging over their happiness.
And that's where we'll pause for now. Things are about to get real intense. So Romeo and Juliet, they're married now, secretly. But remember that warning from Friar Lawrence.
Violent delight.
Have violent ends. And wouldn't you know it, things escalate quickly with Mercutio and Tybalt.
Oh yeah, Mercutio. He's a firecracker. Always quick with a joke, but also quick to anger.
And Tybalt, he's all swagger and pride. It's like a recipe for disaster.
Definitely. And despite Romeo trying to play peacemaker,
Things get out of hand, swords come out, and...
Mercutio's down, fatally wounded. But even with his dying breath, he curses both families.
A plague of both your houses. Talk about chilling words.
It changes the mood instantly, like a dark cloud descending.
And Romeo, he just snaps. Grief, rage, it all boils over. He kills Tybalt.
It's an act of passion,
Mhm.
but with huge consequences. The turning point of the play, really. Everything spins out of control.
And the prince, he has to act. Romeo's banished from Verona.
Banished. It might not be death, but for Juliet, it's like her world's been shattered.
She just married this guy, and now he's gone. Her reaction is devastating. That banish, that one word banished, she says, hath slain 10,000 Tybalts.
It's powerful stuff. Shows how deeply she loves Romeo. Banishment is worse than death to her.
But Juliet's not one to sit around and cry. She goes straight to Friar Lawrence.
Seeking a solution, any solution.
She's desperate, even threatens to kill herself if he can't help. So the friar, he comes up with a plan.
A risky one.
Oh, yeah. Juliet's going to take this potion. It'll make her seem dead.
Like a deep sleep. She'll be put in the Capulet tomb, and the friar will send word to Romeo.
To come get her when she wakes up. It's a wild plan, but Juliet's willing to do it.
She's brave, no doubt. Even leaves a dagger behind, just in case things go wrong.
She's taking a huge gamble. But of course, with this play, nothing's ever simple.
Nope. While Juliet's getting ready for this fake death, her father...
Lord Capulet.
Yeah, he moves up the wedding with Paris to the next day, totally unaware of what's really going on.
Talk about dramatic irony. The audience knows, but the characters are stumbling towards tragedy.
And then, to top it off, Friar John. He's supposed to deliver that crucial letter to Romeo.
Explaining the plan.
Right, but he gets delayed. Plague breaks out.
Of all the bad timing. So Romeo, he never gets the message.
Still thinks Juliet is really dead. It's heartbreaking.
And it all leads to that final scene in Juliet's tomb. Romeo gets some poison, goes there, ready to die with Juliet.
But Paris is there too, mourning at her grave.
Two heartbroken guys, both thinking Juliet is gone forever, and they end up fighting.
Tragic. Romeo kills Paris. And then he drinks the poison. Dies right next to Juliet. All because of miscommunication, bad luck, and that stupid feud. And just when you think it can't get worse.
Juliet wakes up.
In a tomb. Finds Romeo dead. Can you imagine?
Talk about a nightmare scenario. And in that moment of pure grief, she takes Romeo's dagger.
Then ends her own life. Curtain falls. One of the saddest scenes in all of literature.
Man, what a gut punch. There's a little bit of light at the end of all that darkness, right?
Yeah, even in the midst of tragedy, there's this moment of reconciliation.
The families finally seeing the consequences of their hate.
They come together at the tomb, put down their weapons. It's powerful.
Montague says he'll build a golden statue of Juliet.
And Capulet promises one for Romeo. Imagine that. They're kids, immortalized in gold.
But it's bittersweet, right? All this loss. Makes you think, how much damage has to happen before people let go of these grudges?
It's a question that stays with you long after the play ends. And it's relevant today, too. Think about families fighting, communities divided.
Countries at war.
Exactly. It's like we're all susceptible to that cycle of hate, even when it leads to terrible things.
Which is what makes Romeo and Juliet so powerful, I think. It's not just a love story, it's a warning.
About what happens when emotions run wild, when we don't communicate, when we hold on to these old divisions.
So many what-ifs in this play.
Right. What if Romeo had just waited a little longer? What if that letter had gotten through?
It's tough to think about.
But that's kind of the point, right? Shakespeare makes us feel the weight of those missed opportunities.
So why do we still care about these two after all these years?
Because love, loss, wanting to be understood, that's all part of being human. We've all had those moments where things went wrong because we didn't communicate.
Or we jump to conclusions. It's like we all have a little bit of Romeo and Juliet in us.
We do. And maybe the lesson here is sometimes just a little patience, really listening to each other, it can change everything.
It's about choosing understanding over hate.
Even when it's hard.
Well said. So, listeners, here's something to think about. If you were Friar Lawrence, what would you have done differently? Is there ever a time when it's okay to lie, even for love? Until next time.